welcome back to my read-along of A Tale of Stars and Shadow. Today we're up to chapter 29 and I'm going to dive straight in. Okay. 3 nights before the monsoon festival, a nightmare involving Sari had Talyn waking at dawn, throat hoarse from screaming, sheets tangled around her sweat-slicked body. Unable to lie there a single moment longer, she forced herself out of bed, ignoring the trembling of her muscles and how hard it was to dress while fighting the heavy weight of awakened grief with every breath. Damn it, she couldn't keep doing this. She had to get past it somehow. It didn't help that all she would be greeted with down at the barracks were long faces and scowls. Her mind was so busy with these thoughts that it wasn't until she was fully dressed and crossing to her front door, hoping the fresh air would help, that she realized how stuffy the room was, how thick the air had become. Opening the door, she was greeted with duller than usual morning sunlight and a wash of humid air. A glance upwards from the railing of the walkway outside her room quickly explained the dimming light. Heavy black clouds scudded across the horizon from the east, so low-flying they obscured the tops of the hills behind those closest. Even as Talyn watched, climbing up to balance on the railing for a better view, the clouds swept in over the citadel. Within moments, a light, hissing rain was falling. By the time she made her way down to the barracks to begin the day, the rain was coming down in thick, steady sheets. The clouds had settled in fully over the hills, shrouding the citadel in mist and giving it the appearance of a city floating in the sky. Dock City and Feather Bay were completely obscured. Talyn and Theak stood under the veranda running along the front of the barracks, staring dismally out into the rain sweeping across the training yard, shoulders hunched. Talyn's wings were damp and bedraggled, hanging forlornly from his back. Talyn dashed through the iron gate and sprinted across the yard towards them. Even in that short amount of time she was soaked through, although unlike the wolves she revelled in the faint crispness to the air, the easing of the endless heat. "I thought the monsoon season didn't start for another few weeks," she said. "It shouldn't." Theak had a pensive expression as he stared at the curtain of falling water. "Sometimes the rains start early, but it's rare." "I'm sure it will be fine." Talyn was staring out at it too. "Just a quick rain before the proper monsoon arrives." "I hope so," Theak muttered. Before Talyn could ask him what he meant, he turned to head inside, where Halun started a fire in the common room and Zamrel and Corin were sitting near it, finishing off breakfast. Talyn pulled at her soaked vest, then gave a shrug and went to stand close to the warmth of the fire in a vain attempt to dry it. "You know it's not actually cold enough for a fire, right?" she told them. No reply. She heaved an inward sigh. "I suppose training's out for today?" Talyn followed them in. "I suppose you've not noticed the indoor training hall in this very barracks?" She raised an eyebrow. "No," he sighed. "Just thought I'd try." She smiled. "We'll skip the run, though. I don't want any of us slipping in the rain and falling off the edge of that warpath." "Come on, you lazy sheep," Theak clapped his hands. "Get yourselves organised. This weather doesn't change the fact you've got a game of Alea in 2 days' time." "Captain," Corin spoke quietly, stopping everyone as they began shuffling for the door. Theak sent a scowl in Corin's direction, but he ignored it. "Yes?" Talyn turned away from the fire. "I'm going down to Mam's for dinner tonight. She asked me to invite you all to join us. You've done so much for her and my sisters. She wants to do something to say thank you." A sweet smile warmed his face. "She's a wonderful cook, so I can promise you a good meal." A distraction from another lonely night trapped with her thoughts and memories. Talyn jumped at it. "That sounds great, Corin. Count me in." "Me too." When Talyn stared at Talyn in astonishment, since when had he been so eager to spend the evening with humans? The winged man shrugged. "I'm heartily sick of the rotten mush our mess cook keeps making. A home-cooked meal sounds good." "That's a lovely thought, lad. I would very much like to join your family for dinner." Theak's grizzled face softened a touch. "I would like to come too," Halun said softly. "Your mother wouldn't mind having me in her house? I wouldn't want to scare your sisters." Corin smiled in genuine pleasure. "We'd love to have you, Halun, and I don't think you're scary. Well, not anymore, anyway." Talyn shot a look at the thief. "Zamrel would love to come too, I'm sure." He scowled at her, but nodded in Corin's direction. "Sure, why not?" Corin beamed. "Mam's putting on a special meal. I promise you won't be disappointed." Talyn straightened. "All right, everyone, that's enough stalling. Into the training hall. Quick, smart." The weather didn't improve all day. If anything, it got worse. The rain grew heavier, and the temperature dropped so that by nightfall it was approaching cool, a fact that wouldn't have bothered Talyn at all if she hadn't been slowly getting accustomed to the sticky, humid heat in Mithraina. After training was over for the day, even though they refused to see it, let alone acknowledge it, she saw genuine improvement in the wolves and just hoped they wouldn't let lack of confidence overwhelm that. She dug through her duffel for something to wear down into Dock City. Her hand hovered, trembling slyly, over the Talyn cloak stored near the bottom of the bag. She didn't even know why she'd brought it, but when she'd been packing, some part of her had been unable to leave it behind. It was dyed the moss green of the Talyn and designed for wear in all conditions. The outside was oilskin, waterproof in snow and light rain, while the interior was thick, warm wool that generated and held body heat. It was tailored specifically for her, and when she lifted it out of her bag, it smelled like home. Carefully, she turned back the shoulder, revealing the twin amber swords etched from stars on the inside lining above the heart. Nestled beneath it were Sari's twin daggers, still wrapped as they had been ever since Rowan had given them to her at the funeral. A glance at the rain sheeting down her window decided her. She shrugged the cloak on over her shoulders, ruthlessly pushing aside the wash of emotion that wanted to go with it. She managed to get out of the palace and through the citadel to the top of the wall walk by travelling most of the way along covered walkways. The wolves waited for her there, huddled under a balcony. "Sorry I'm late," she apologised. "Shall we go?" Corin nodded enthusiastically, but the others were all staring dubiously out at the rain, varying degrees of worry on their faces. "What is it?" she asked. "Just hoping the rain might have let up by now, that's all," Theak said. "There's a lot coming down," Zamril added, serious for once, "and it seems to have settled in." "I see," she frowned, puzzled. "If you prefer not to head down in this weather, we can—" "It'll be fine," Talyn cut her off. "Come on, I'm starved." Talyn pulled her hood over her head and followed Corin. They walked quickly, rain pelting down around them, careful where they stepped on the steep path down the wall. Once at the bottom, they quickened their pace to an almost run. Talyn was soaked through from the knees down, and water dripped from the edge of her hood, running in rivulets down her face. The wind whipped around them, not quite cold, but with an edge that had taken away the air's humidity. She huddled deeper into her cloak as Corin led the way into the market quarter. After twisting and turning through a number of dark streets, he came to a stop outside a 2-story brick building. Water ran, waterfall-like, from the eaves of the buildings around them and splashed into growing puddles on the side of the street. Talyn glanced around to check her surroundings from habit, but nobody was out in this weather. Corin walked up to a doorway set into the brick and pushed it open, then led them up an internal staircase. At the top was a narrow corridor interspersed with doorways. Corin stopped at the first one on the left and knocked loudly. "It's me, ma'am." A woman's voice called out in greeting, and then running feet approached the door. Someone fiddled with the lock, and the door swung open. "Corin!" A small girl ran out, a huge grin on her face. "Elsie!" Corin swung the girl into his arms and peppered her face with kisses. "You're growing so big!" "Corin!" Another girl came pouting down the narrow hall. She was older than the other by a couple of years, but had the same dark curly hair and grey eyes. "You haven't come to visit us for ages." "I'm sorry, Jenna. I've been really busy. You know we have the Alea game coming up." Corin put Elsie down and bent to kiss Jenna. Her eyes shone. "Our tutor said we could have the day off lessons so Mam can take us to watch. Elsie and me have been bragging to our friends all week. Nobody else has a brother playing in the game." "Elsie and I, Jenna, not Elsie and me." A middle-aged woman appeared in the hall. She had a friendly face and dark hair tied in a bun at the back of her head. "And where are your manners, girls? You don't leave guests standing in the hall like that. They must be soaking wet and cold." The girls scrambled out of the way, and Corin's mother came forward to welcome them in. She didn't even blink at Talyn's presence, giving him the same warm hug she gave all of them, and completely ignoring that his wings were dripping all over the entryway. "I'm Arana. I'm so glad you could all come. I've been wanting to do something to properly thank you since everything you did for us. I can't tell you how grateful we are. The girls are enjoying their schooling so much, and now I can feed and dress them properly. Even Corin has a proper job now, and a future." Tears pricked Arana's eyes, the gratitude and relief shining from her face. Talyn's heart lurched. "It was a pleasure to help, ma'am," Theak said, unaccountably verbose. "Corin is a valued member of our wing. We're a team. We help each other out." Talyn gave him a pointed look at those words, lifting an eyebrow. He scowled, eyes dropping to his boots. They'd hardly been living up to that mantra recently. "The day he was recruited to your wing was the luckiest day of Corin's life." Arana was beaming at Talyn now, and she managed a warm smile in return. "Theak wasn't wrong, Arana. I'm Corin's captain, and that means I look out for him. It's nothing special, it's just the way things work where I come from." "Then you come from a much better place than Dock City, Captain." Arana reached out to squeeze her arm. Now come on through. You all must be hungry. Talyn followed, turning back only when she noticed Talyn hadn't followed. He was standing still in the hall, eyes on Arana, something odd in his expression. You okay? She asked. He gave himself a little shake and nodded, his expression returning to normal. Let's go eat. Arana had put together a wonderful meal despite the family's limited circumstances. The food was hot and delicious, and Talyn found herself relaxing in the warm, friendly house with the distant hum of rain beating down outside. It was exactly the distraction she'd needed. Jana and Elsie sat on either side of Talyn and pestered her with questions about being a female warrior until Corin tactfully removed them. After they were full to bursting, Arana and the girls cleared away the dishes despite the wolves' attempts to help, and then Arana brought in steaming mugs of kabi. As they sat around chatting, Corin went to retrieve his fiddle. The wolves, even Zamrel, smiled for the first time in weeks as he played a merry dancing tune for them. When it grew late, Arana ushered the small girls off to bed. Talyn was beginning to feel distinctly sleepy from a combination of the warm room and relaxation when a loud thumping came at the door. Everyone jumped. In pure instinct, Talyn leapt to her feet, hands reaching for her size. Theak waved Arana away from the door and went to answer it, an intimidating scowl on his face. What is it? He barked at whoever was standing outside. There were some inaudible words spoken, then, Well, you'd better come in then. A young man stumbled into the room, pale and soaked through. He gulped to find a room full of eyes staring at him. Theak's scowl probably wasn't helping. What is it, Arul? Arana asked gently, then glanced at Talyn and Theak. He's my neighbour. Arul swallowed. I've come to warn you. The rainfall is wreaking havoc on the rush. If it doesn't stop soon, the banks are going to flood. The poor quarter will be in trouble first, but so will the rest of the city if it keeps up. Arana went white. Are we in danger up here? I don't know. He hopped from foot to foot. If the rain gets heavier, I think we might be. I have to go. There are others to warn. The wolves stared at each other as Arul raced back out the door. Arana's hand lifted to her mouth in shock. Theak unconsciously stepped towards her, but didn't seem to know what to do to reassure her. This is what happened last time, Zamrel muttered. The wolves turned as one to look at Talyn, clearly waiting for her cue. Her heart thumped, and then she froze. They were looking at her like she had the solution to everything, and she wasn't that Talyn anymore, the one who had an answer to every challenge, no matter how difficult. The silence fell heavy over the room, and the wolves' confidence began to waver. She saw the slumping of Zamrel's shoulders, the disappointment in Corin's. She felt sick. One step at a time, Tal. You need to understand the problem before you can attack it. Sari's voice steadied her panic. She shook herself, clearing her throat so that her voice came out firmly. You said last time? Has this happened before? There's usually a bit of flooding during monsoon season. The banks of the Rush can't handle the amount of rain we get, but it's never good when the rains come early. Last time it was really bad, back when I was a youngster in the city patrol, maybe 15 years ago now, Theak said. Dock City flooded. Hundreds died. One step, one step. If floods happen most monsoon seasons, there must be procedures in place to deal with it. The towns in the foothills of the Aylmire Mountains were well practiced in how to respond in case of avalanche after the spring melts. Not really, he cleared his throat. Most years the flooding is mild and everyone just looks out for themselves, sandbagging their homes and the like. But if we get another bad one, the poor quarter will be first underwater and they don't have the resources to put anything in place. Where do people get the sandbags from? Like a rusty key in a lock, her mind was beginning to work again, to shake off the stiffness of a year away from battle. She welcomed it. The city has a couple of storehouses of them in case of another bad flood. At least, they did back when I was patrol captain. They're still there, Zamrel spoke up unexpectedly, then gave them a sheepish look. They're a good place to hide when you're being chased by the patrol. She frowned, thinking over what would likely happen if a similar disaster happened in Ryathel. If we're facing another bad flood, then there needs to be a structured approach to managing it if we want to save lives and homes. Theak, go down to the Market Quarter Patrol Headquarters as quickly as you can and talk to Andrus Tai. He can deploy his men and send word to the other watch officers on duty across the city. If they all work together, they can sandbag the city in strategic locations to stop the progress of the flood. Theak reached up and pulled on his cloak, promising, I'll be quick. What about us? Corin asked. Talyn hesitated. To her, the answer was clear. But here and with Raynar, the relationship between the Wingard and Dock City was so volatile, and she didn't understand it well enough to be sure of the right thing to do. But by the time she and the wolves got themselves back up to the Citadel, found Ravenir, and asked him for orders, too much time would be wasted. And the human wolves were scared, clearly worried for their friends and family. Tierslyn's expression indicated a wariness, as if sensing he was about to be drawn into something he didn't want to be. Instinct told her to help, an instinct she'd once had absolute faith in, until she'd lost Sari. She swallowed, hating herself for being so indecisive. Go with your instincts, Tal. They've never led us wrong before. They led us to your death. That doesn't make you useless. Enough of this, Talyn. Captain? Corrin stepped towards her. Are you all right? She was horrified to realize that tears had risen to her eyes. Damn it, why was this so hard? But Sari had been right. If she kept wavering like this, she'd never get herself back. So she took a deep breath and fought her fear. She looked around. Everyone's eyes were on her, even Theak, who still hovered by the door. She met his eyes. Ask Andrus if he could use our help. Theak almost smiled, then saluted. Aye, Captain. You're going to let us help? Astonishment filled Zamral's voice as the door slammed behind Theak. What about Prince Kuan? The citadel is hundreds of meters in the air, Zamral, she spoke briskly to cover her uncertainty. They're hardly in danger of flooding. Corrin nodded, looking at his mother. Ma'am, we'll help you pack up some things for you and the girls until Talyn Parkson gets back. It may not come to it, but you'll need to be ready to leave quickly. All right. Colour was returning to Irana's face. There's a spare bag in the hall closet. It should be big enough for our things, but not too big that I can't carry it. The 4 wolves worked alongside Talyn and Irana to pack the family's meagre belongings. They'd just finished, Irana offering to make some hot tea, when Theak reappeared at the door, dripping wet. How did it go? Talyn asked immediately. Over half the city patrol has been called up to the citadel. Most of the rest haven't called into their shifts. Ty's doing his best to drag them onto duty, but they're all protecting their own homes. Who called them up to the citadel? She asked in astonishment. It's never going to flood. They're too far above sea level. Prince Mathanas, Theak scowled. Poor winged folk don't want to get their feet wet. It's not that, Zamral said bitterly. They're afraid the humans might start fleeing up to the citadel to escape the flood. They don't want to be overrun. Talyn gaped at him, momentarily at a complete and utter loss. Without a large group of helpers, she had no idea how the city was going to contain a flooding river. The mood in the room had dropped, and Corrin's shoulders were slumped as he spoke. At least we can make sure you and the girls are safe, ma'am. Talyn stared at them, only half paying attention, as they fell into a discussion about whether they should leave immediately or wait to see if the street looked like it was going to be flooded. Corrin wondered whether the wingguard would mind if his family sheltered at the wolf barracks. Zamral offered to sneak them in so nobody would know. Theak barked at him to stop being a fool. Halun and Tierslyn stayed quiet. She told herself to listen to them, to help Corrin's family and then shelter up at the citadel. What exactly could she do anyway? She knew little about Dock City and even less about how to deal with a flood. But no, she'd already decided to go with her instincts, and it was time to commit. Theak? She spoke before thinking, and everyone in the room turned to her. Captain? He frowned. Talk to me. You know this city better than I do. What is the worst-case scenario if the rain doesn't stop and the river continues to flood? If it's a bad one, like 15 years ago? I don't know exactly. As I said, it's only happened once before, on a day like this when the rains came early and we had a heavy and continuous downpour 3 days straight. We lost all the slums, and a third of the city went underwater, most of the poor quarter and good chunks of the market and dock quarters. She chewed on her lip, thinking, Irana, can I have a quill and parchment, please? Not questioning her odd request, Irana left the room briefly and returned holding a small piece of parchment along with quill and ink. Talyn took it with a smile of thanks, her gaze turning to the winged wolf. Tierslyn, can you fly in this weather? Of course, he said promptly, indignant at the idea he might not be up to it. Talyn wrote busily, Take this to the Falcon as quickly as you can, and then come straight back and find us. You think he'll help? Zamral sneered. He certainly won't if we don't ask. She finished writing and checked it over briefly before handing it to Tierslyn. Keep that dry. Tierslyn tucked it inside his tunic and turned swiftly to run back down the stairs and out into the night, surprising her with his lack of complaint. Talyn turned to face the others. Who can tell me where the weakest points in the city are, the lowest areas, where it will flood first? For a moment there was a thick silence in the room, and even Irana looked surprised. Zamral was stripped of all smugness as he stared at her. You're going to help. We are going to help. Quickly now, where do we go first? Halun heaved his bulk out of the chair, tone and posture more authoritative than she'd ever seen him. The poor quarter. The western area along the edge of the rush is in a shallow depression of land. It will fill up like a lake once the banks burst. I know the quickest way to get there. All right, lead the way. Talyn glanced at Irana. When Tierslyn comes back, please tell him where we've gone. By the door, Talyn shrugged on her Cullinan cloak and pulled the hood down snugly over her head. A jolt of pure energy fizzed through her, and her eyes closed momentarily. She'd forgotten what this was like, heading into an impossible situation with only her wits and strength to guide her. She ignored how terrifying that was without Sari at her side, and instead focused on the rush of it. "Let's go." Zamrel stopped her arm as she was about to follow the others out. "The game is in 2 days. One of us could easily sprain an ankle or injure something, and even if we don't, we'll be exhausted." She would have laughed if he hadn't looked so serious. "Lives and homes are far more important than a game, Zamrel. We'll worry about Alea later." Confusion flitted across his face for a moment. Then, for the first time since she'd known him, he spoke with genuine warmth. "Thank you." And that's the end of chapter 29. I hope you enjoyed that one. We're about to kick off into a very epic chapter next, which I can't wait to get into. As always, if you'd like to avoid spoilers, please jump out here before I start my author commentary. If you are jumping out, I hope you really enjoyed this chapter, and I really look forward to seeing you for the next one. Otherwise, let's go and discuss this one a little bit more. Alright, chapter 29. Talyn wakes up from one of her regular nightmares about Sari, only to step outside and find the rains have started. Now, they come earlier than usual, which when she heads down to the barracks to meet her wolves for morning training, they all seem a little uneasy about the fact the rains have come so early. But they don't really say any more about that because they're distracted by Corin inviting them all to dinner with his family down in Dock City that evening. Irana, his mother, has been looking for a way to say thank you for everything that they've done for Corin's family, and she'd love to host them for dinner and make them a home-cooked meal, of which they're all pretty excited about, particularly Tierslin, to Talyn's surprise, that he would want to spend the evening with humans, but he seems as excited as the others, and even Zamrel kind of half-heartedly agrees to come along. It's still raining by the time they head down that night, and that's clearly making the wolves even more uneasy, and Talyn later finds out that's because in the rare times that rains have come so early before in Mithrena, there's been some pretty horrific flooding, which has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Dock City residents and even more losing their homes. Now, Talyn's been talking a good game with the wolves since she's arrived. She's sincere. She means what she's saying. She's authentic. She comes from a place where the rulers generally do mean the best for their people and are trying to do the best by their people. And this is the same messaging that she's been giving to her wolves, trying to win them, trying to build rapport. But until now, it's been words. And Theak has pointed out to her himself that the reality for them is very different from what Talyn is preaching, and has always been different and will never be different as far as they're concerned. This is the very first time when Talyn's actually been able to prove to them that she means what she says. When it comes down to it, the opportunity for the wolves to go and help in Dock City, to help with the flooding, to try and prevent some deaths, or at least prevent people losing their homes. She puts that first and foremost, and she does that without doubt, without hesitation. There is no choice for her. The game's not important. Saving people's lives, saving their homes, saving their livelihoods, helping in a dire situation. That's who Talyn is. That's who the Denorics are. That is her. And for the first time, Corin and Theak already kind of half believed in her, but for Halun and Zamrel in particular to see this is the first time Zamrel, he's confused because he keeps expecting her to betray him and she's not. In fact, she keeps proving that she means what she says, and this is the first action where she's actually proved that, not just her words. And she gets that genuine thank you from him at the end, which I find very touching. But yeah, so the wolves are headed out into the night to help with the floods. For those who've read on further, that's a pretty epic chapter. I'm really excited to go and read that one now. If you have any questions about this chapter, I'd love to hear them. Please drop them in the comments below. But otherwise, yeah, let's get onto it. It's going to be fun. All right, have a great day, guys.